Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on page 453 talking about the system development lifecycle. Now, a lot of people don't like this system, the system development lifecycle, because it's too slow and clumsy. It takes an awful lot of time to go through all these little phases. You know, you do this little part, and then you do this little part. And it's often difficult. It's sort of like a one-way street. Once you got to the functional requirements, it's kind of difficult to kind of go back uphill. And once you got down to the system specifications, it's a little difficult. It's like, too late. You know, you can't make any changes in what the functional requirements are because we're already down here in the system development phase. And so it was criticized for being very rigid. Okay. Now, so there are other alternatives out there. One of them is called Agile. Agile is a fantastic system. Let me explain kind of the difference between the SDLC and Agile. In the SDLC, let's say that you were contracted out to do this. You will have succeeded if you did everything they ask you to do. Okay? So they come in there and say, I want you to build this, and you did it, and you did it really well. Okay. But the product was absolutely horrible. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Let's say you were contracted to build, I don't know, yet another, I don't know, virtual reality machine. Okay, so some sort of VR goggles. That's what this task is all about. And you did everything they asked you to do, but the product was horrible and no one bought it. Under SDLC, that would be considered a success because you did what they told them to do. In Agile, you are now responsible for not just doing what they told you to do, but producing a good product. So Agile provides you better product at the end. It allows you to get halfway through the design process and somebody raises their hand and says, but wait, we can't have wires hanging off this thing. This thing's going to have to be, done from some sort of a battery, don't you think? And everybody goes, oh man, you're absolutely right. Where under the SDLC, if you say, I'm sorry, it's too late now to make changes to the specifications. We're going to have a wire coming off this thing and plugging into the wall. Okay, see my point? So Agile is quite literally Agile. It allows you to basically have a framework, and then you get allowed to make changes to it as it goes along. And again, Agile makes it you're now responsible for not just following the rules, but making a good product. Okay, now Agile's not for everyone. And one of the reasons is this procedure, I could probably tell you exactly how long it's going to take and exactly how much money it's going to take. Okay, if you're building VR goggles, I could say, okay, it's going to take you whatever, 6 months to do. It's going to cost $100,000 to design this thing. With Agile, I don't really know. I mean, this thing could go on for quite some time. A lot of people say that Agile is quicker. Well, that's true if everything goes right. But if things don't go right and you have to chunk what you've done, just chunk that away and start over, well, yeah, this could take longer. It also could cost more. So there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages, but people who are kind of rigid thinking to begin with, like, corporate environment or perhaps the U.S. government, they kind of like the SDLC because it is rigid. And I know exactly how long it's going to take, and I know exactly how much to put in the budget. Agile would be like, I don't know, 6 months, maybe a year. How much is it going to cost? Somewhere 100, 200,000. So, okay. So, let's continue. So, they've taken this and kind of made a web version of this. And it's not really a different SDLC. It's just more specific points. So, it's the same thing. It's just slightly different. So, we're going to spend an awful lot of time going over this. So, not going to do it right this very second. Okay, so on page 455, they talk about the first one, the conceptualization part. So the conceptualization is basically, what on earth am I trying to do? Okay, so I like to talk about the first ones, the first couple of phases here. I like to frame it as if you were answering a question. So the question that you're trying to answer here is, what do you want the web page to do? And this is typically based upon either a threat or an opportunity. An opportunity meaning, wow, no one has VR goggles that do this, so I'm going to go out. Another one, a threat would be, oh my God, everyone has VR goggles that are like ours, and theirs are a heck of a lot cheaper. Okay, so either a threat or an opportunity, one of the two. Those are the ones that start this process going. If you're a completely happy person and you're happy with your sales and there's nothing going on, then you probably don't need a web page. This is for people who are trying to reach forward, either to solve a problem or to take advantage of an opportunity. Cool. All right. So this is very goal oriented. Most likely the opportunity part is going to be a statement like, we need to increase the sales by 22%, something like that. And typically they're not kind of wave of the hand subjective stuff. Typically they're very, very measurable. Things where somebody says, increase by 22%, that's pretty doggone specific. So it'd be pretty easy to find out if you were successful at obtaining that goal or not, right? Okay, just saying. So, the problem here is you need to be asking the right kind of questions. Let me give you a story of what happens if you skip all these steps and go directly from here's my problem to here's the solution. All right, it's a crazy story, but bear with me. So, this guy works at a grocery store and his sales are beginning to decline, and some little old lady came to him and said, I've got arthritis and I'm kind of short and I just can't reach the stuff at the top of the shelf, and I just have to get somebody to help me all the time. And so the guy says, so that must be reason why we're losing sales. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to shut down the store for a weekend and we're going to lower all the shelves. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And so he goes into this plan. It's well thought out plan. Shut down the store, have all the employees come in, and they rebuild all the shelving and kind of lower them and restock everything and move things around. And they do an excellent job of accomplishing what it is that they want to do. And then they find out that has nothing to do with sales whatsoever. That lowering the shelves did not affect sales at all. So the big picture was, I want to stop the decline in sales. So you can't just say, oh, I know what the problem is, let's just do this. No, you have to figure out what the problem is. You can't just assume and jump directly from here's my problem to here's my solution. You need to go through all the rest of the steps. If you had, you probably would have found out that, yes, that one complaint was probably useful, but that was not the reason why your sales were declining. Okay. So you have to ask the right question. The analysis. This was, gathering the requirements. What it is that this thing must do, or to answer the question, what needs to be done, and is it even feasible? Okay, because it could be that what needs to be done is going to be like, no, we're not going to install holographic projectors in our storefront, that kind of stuff. So yes, you need to be able to ask some questions. So I kind of break it up into two phases. One is the requirements part. So what are the requirements? So you go to what's the requirement for the content of this web page? What am I trying to do? If I'm going to be selling stuff, I got to have an inventory of all my parts. And it's going to have prices and descriptions, and maybe I ought to have categories and sort fields and all these other things. So you're thinking about what the requirements of this web page is. I need to have a shopping cart. I need to have maybe a customer forum, a portal, or some sort of a system where they can ask questions. What is it you want me to do? You also probably ought to look at your competitors at this point. So during this requirements gathering phase, looking at your competitors' website and go, well, they've got a frequently asked questions thing, and that looks to be pretty cool. So let's add one of those to ours. Okay. And then to talk about feasibility. So first of all, is it economically feasible? What is you're trying to do? I mean, you could say, I'm trying. My goal here is to increase sales by 5%. And so you figure out what 5% is, and then you discover that you're going to be spending 10 times that to accomplish that 5%. Like, no, that's not a very good return on investment. There are technical feasibilities, like maybe that's just not going to work. And there's what they call environmental feasibilities, and we're not necessarily talking about the natural world. We're talking about, I want to put this website in the corner of this building do I have enough power? Do I have battery backup? Do I have multiple connections to the internet? Also, things like schedule. I'm going to have some downtime. I'm going to be shutting down the assembly plant in August. And so during that time is when I need to be able to put this website together. So you have exactly 14 days to build this. You go, oh! So yeah, you need to know what the schedules are, what all the constraints are, all this environment are. Financial, of course, is a good one. You know, am I actually going to, how much money can I spend on this thing and still come out okay? So requirements and feasibility, that's what you gather there. The design on page 456, you know, just following clockways around this thing. This answers the question of how are we going to do all those things that you specified in step 2? Okay, so step 1 is, what is it you're trying to do? Please state the nature of the medical emergency. Okay, what is it you're trying to do? Step 2 is, okay, what am I going to have, you know, what do I have to do? And then the second one is, how am I going to do that? Or the third one, how am I going to do all the things you said that need to be done? So, this one is kind of the tough one. A lot of people spend a lot of time doing interviews. They talk about, you know, this is where you're going to be figuring out what the site organization, you know, whether or not it's going to be a tall and skinny org or a flat one, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, the site organization, what it's going to look like. Maybe have a prototype that you can show to people, those kind of things. Page layout, you know, all those kind of architectural kind of things get decided here. And they talk about documenting the purpose for each page. Now, this may be a little overkill, but there is a content sheet, you know, on page 457, figure 10.3, that basically says, you know, why does this page exist? What is its purpose? Now, let me give you a reason why that sounds kind of silly, but it's not. A lot of people, look, if you went to a marketing person and say, hey, what do you want on the website? They're going to give you this piles and piles and piles of stuff to put out there. The problem is when a customer comes to the website, they do not want to see advertisements about the products. They want to see descriptions. It's like when I go to Amazon and I type in, you know, toaster oven, okay, I do not want to see tons and tons and tons of marketing material about toaster ovens. Instead, I want to see clean cut descriptions, short, you know, how many slices of toast and, you know, all these kind of ratings and things. How much does it cost? You know, I don't want a lot of marketing material. So you're going to have to tell your marketing people, hey, you know, back off. You know, the purpose for this is not to push information onto unsuspecting people. That's not what this is about. That's what advertising is, right? You're opening a magazine or watching TV and something is pushed to you. You didn't deliberately turn on your TV just so you could watch the commercial. You don't deliberately turn to the ads in your magazine. So their way of thinking is push data, push information. And what you want to do is to pull information. If they want to know more, they pull more. Don't overwhelm them with junk. Okay, let me get off my high horse. Okay, so what is the purpose for each one of these pages is a little bit more important than that now. Now you need to be able to say, here's what the customer wants to see, not what you want the customer to see. This is what the customer wants to see, which is why prototyping comes out. One of the most important things you need to do at step 3 is to kind of circle back during the design and go back to step 1 and say, okay, now that I've got a kind of a preliminary design, am I on track to do what it is this website was supposed to do? For example, the 22% increase in sales. I need to be thinking that. I need to always go back to the top and say, am I on track? Am I on track? Am I on track? Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.